off. I guess it knew I was going to be speaking, so it just turned itself off. Good morning. Good to see everybody. Pressing toward the mark is the title of our lesson today. And I'm glad that you're here with us. And I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak. I like teaching class and I like speaking. I've done it a long time. But as you're sitting there, it seems like things unfold quite rapidly, and all of a sudden the ball is in your court, and it's time you got to step up, and it's time to do the Lord's what's been given to me to say. Philippians 3:13-14 that Jimmy read a while ago is one of my favorite, couple of my favorite verses in the entire Bible. Paul is described, we talked about this a little bit in Bible class. Paul had done some really, really bad things that me and you will never even come close to doing. But he says he's not apprehended yet. Turn that off. Turn them. Go. He said, I count not myself to have apprehended. I'm not there yet, okay? I am not there yet. But this one thing I do, forgetting the things that are behind and reaching forth to the things which are before. Folks, we can hang on to stuff in behind way too long, can't we? Ever done anything and you need forgiveness that you've wronged will forgive you pretty easily if you'll ask them. Sometimes they'll forgive you pretty easy if you don't ask them. But oftentimes we have trouble forgiving ourselves, don't we? Look at the bad thing I did. Look at the terrible things we don't forgive ourselves. God would not have it to be that way. Paul would not have it to be that way. Forgetting those things which are, Paul, you can lay around and wallow in self-pity all you want to, but it's not going to change it, is it? It's not going to change. Just say you got caught drunk driving when you was 20 years old, okay? And I'm 68 now. I never was caught drunk driving and I didn't drink or drive. But if you don't have to worry about that from now on. You've paid your fine. You maybe went to jail overnight or something like that. You can move on from that, folks, but you have to forgive yourself, okay? Paul says, I'm not worried about what's behind that I can't change, but I am reaching for the top, okay? As I've walked the Appalachian Trail, as I climb some of these hills, and you think, man, the top has got to be here somewhere, because I can see the clouds up here. And when you quit seeing the trees, you're kind of getting towards the top. But sometimes them mountains fool you, okay? And you think, I thought I was near the top, and I'm not even close. I still see a lot more mountain as you come around the curve. It's what you do. Just take another step. And that's life, folks. Toward the mark for the prize, the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. High mark is Jesus Christ, okay? You cannot, we talked about this in Bible class, you will not get to God without Jesus Christ. Don't ever forget that. I press toward the mark. Today we're going to look at a few Bible characters in the Old Testament and some in the New Testament, and we're going to see things that they did and how they handled this adversity. Is adversity coming to your house? It may have already been there, and it's a real good chance it's coming again, okay? It's a real good chance. I heard Wayne Langford say one time from the pulpit, he said, this church at Maryland is ripe for the picking for the Satan, okay? You can say the same thing about this church at Stanford, the church in Crab Orchard, the church at wherever. They're just ripe for the picking. They seem like they're strong. They seem like they're loving. They seem like they're caring. But I'm going to see if I can't just wheel in there a little bit. Satan, his adversary, says, I can ease in there and I can sow just a little seed of doubt, a little seed of trouble, and we'll see. Virgil's been here since the early 60s, if not the late 50s, preaching. And Virgil, the troubles have come from time to time. They have come from time to time. But how do you handle that adversity when they come? We'll look at the adversity many of us face today, and then we'll ask ourselves the question, the question of this term, how will you handle adversity when it comes to you? Okay? Let's start out with Job, okay, in the Bible. Probably the oldest book in the Bible. Here's what happens to Job. He's there at his house, and everything seems good. And then I'm going to summarize all of these things so you make it easy. The guy comes to him and says, the Sabaeans stole the oxen and killed your servants. They stole the oxen and they killed the servants? Well, why would they do that? They stole the oxen, they killed the serpent. While the guy's just finishing talking and Job's contemplating this, another guy comes. Fire came from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servant. Wow. Oxen are stolen. Servants are killed. The sheep are burned up. The servants are burned up. While that man's talking, the Chaldeans stole the camels and killed the servants. The Sabaeans stole the oxen. Fire came from heaven, killed the sheep and the servants. And the Chaldeans stole the camels and killed the servants. And then the last messenger says this: your sons and daughters were killed when the house they were in collapsed because of a mighty windstorm. 4 things in a row, and they all bad, okay? Oxen is bad. The sheep, it's terrible. Camels, servants, and now your kids. 10 children, and they're all killed. They were just having a meal together. And the strong wind came, blew down the house, it fell on them, and killed them, every single one. How did Job react? He arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshiped. And he said, naked came I from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I don't know if I'd have said this, do you all? I don't know if I'd have said what Job said. But Job understood the frailty of life. He understood it better than we understand it. Now, he didn't understand it completely, and he questioned it, and he talked and wondered why he's even born. But he understood that I came into this world with nothing, and I will leave. And will that happen to all of us? Amen. Shake your head, yes. You brought nothing into this world, and it's certain you'll take nothing up. Job got some bad news, folks, but he handled it. His wife said, well, Job, why don't you just curse God and die? You can't get any worse than this. And he said, woman, why would I do that? I will not charge God foolishly. And he kept the faith. There he sits, and we know later he was afflicted with boils because Satan told God, he said, well, the only reason he's not cursed you and died is because you've not got his stuff and you've got his kids, but you've not really bothered him. He's stricken with boils from his head, top of his head to the bottom of his feet. And his friends come to offer him sympathy, and they seem to be more trouble than there were. What about Joseph? Joseph was a good boy. He was living in Canaan land with his daddy and his brothers. Seemed like everything looked pretty good. Bible says he was his daddy's favorite. His daddy made him a coat of many colors. The brothers could not stand that. They decided, well, we need to kill this guy. And his brother Reuben, the oldest brother, said, let's don't kill him. That seemed like a really too harsh. So they dug a pit, threw him in the pit, sold him to the passers-by, the people that were coming by, and they said, we'll never see him no more. He's out of our hair. He's out of our mind. He's out of our sight. They took his coat of many colors and put blood on it and pretended it was Joseph. Said a wild animal killed Joseph. Daddy, your son's gone. No more Joseph to worry about. Joseph is sold into slavery, okay? He goes to work in Potiphar's house. Potiphar is one of the big shots in Egypt. And Potiphar's wife is a bad woman, and she likes this young man. And so she wants to have an affair with him. And so she tries to seduce him several times. And finally, he runs out of the house. But as he runs out of the house, she grabs his tunic, part of his clothing, and then she tells her husband, because he won't say yes to her advances, she tells her husband, look what you're savored. This servant boy that you like so good, this Joseph, he tried to rape me. Poor Joseph, sold into slavery, winds up in jail, thrown into jail because of this lie. But then he interprets the dreams, and he's given a position of authority. He helps shield the Egyptians from starvation, saves his family from starvation, and reconciles with his family. We know this story. And Joseph said on his deathbed, he said, take my bones back to Canaan land whenever you go. And they did take them back after 450 years in Egyptian captivity. Joseph, a young man, If I'd have been like Joseph, I probably would have just said, I don't know, my family's sold me into slavery. Daddy probably thinks I'm dead. I'm never going to get to go back home. I'm just going to live and let live and do the best I can. That's what most young men would have thought. This woman's probably attractive. She's certainly got plenty of prestige, probably plenty of money. It seems like the road for me to take. He don't do any of those things, does he? He don't complain. He don't act like I've been mistreated. He just keeps doing good, okay? He just keeps on doing good. And Joseph and the whole people of Canaan would wind up in good shape. There they are showing the picture. Now, these are just pictures that I picked up off the internet. They're showing the daddy the coat. Look here, daddy's got blood on it. Your son is dead. But he would be reconciled with his daddy, and we know how that story worked out well. Daniel, Jameson, this is a story y'all studied last week, I think. Deb talked to him about Daniel in the lion's den. He was educated in the king's court. He interprets visions. He's promoted and given authority. He's conspired against and cast into a den of lions. God sent his angels and rescued Daniel. There's Daniel in the lion's den. Jameson said last week if he'd have been thrown in that lion's den that he would have taken a pistol or a 22 and shot the lions, okay? That's the way Jameson would have handled it. So that's a pretty good way to handle it, Jameson. But we know that Daniel was a good man, a good young man, and people lied about him, okay? And they wanted him to bow down. They wanted him to do things that he was not ever going to do because he worshiped his God. He's thrown into the den of lions. This is a fascinating story for little kids. It's a fascinating story for people like me and you. It's a wonderful story. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Daniel's reputation is still with him, still with us, folks. Daniel was a very strong and courageous young man. He did not whine. He did not complain. He did not moan. Then did I mess up when I moved? Rahab. Now we get somebody here that maybe not such a sterling reputation. Rahab worked as a prostitute. And I think whenever we talk about prostitutes, we probably can't help but say, oh, that's kind of a bad line of work, isn't it? That's kind of I can't imagine doing that. I just can't imagine. It just seems in every way bad. But she did. She worked as a prostitute. She hid the spies who came to her house. She lived in the city of Jericho. Jericho was just across the Jordan River. And so the spies were sent into the Canaan land to find out. Moses sent the spies there. Go in there and see what it's like. Remember, they sent the spies, and they said, see what you find out about it. So when they came back, the spies, 10 of the 12 spies said, oh, them people are giants, and they make us look like grasshoppers. There is no hope whatsoever that we can take that country. But 2 of the spies said, yes, we can take it. You remember who those 2 were? You remember who those 2? Joshua and Caleb. They said, we can take that land, and we will take it. But the majority of the spies ruled the day, and so because of their unbelief, God had the people wander in the wilderness for 40 years. But while they're in there spying the land out, they get to Rahab's apartment or house there on the side of the wall. And she says, listen, we know that God is with you all. And she said, I think this is one of the best literature in the Bible. It says, when we heard that you all were coming, everyone's hearts melted. I love that terminology. Everyone's heart melted. We were scared to death. We know you all are coming. And God says, I will come like a hornet leading my people. And I tell you what, if there's a hornet comes into this building this morning and Leland, he gets in your pew, you got to go somewhere, don't you? You don't stay with no hornet. Jimmy, you got to go somewhere. I've been stung by a hornet a few times in my life. And I tell you what, wherever they are, I don't want any part of it, okay? She says, you all are coming with God in the lead. And whenever they did come, they destroyed Jericho completely. But she said, I don't want to get killed. I don't want to get killed. I don't want my family to get killed. I don't want my kids and my mom and dad. I don't want my family, who all the family she had. I don't want to get them killed. She hid them out and allowed the spies to escape safely. She asked for save her and her family. Remember, they told her, they said, put this ribbon, this cord or rope out the window. And if you're not in that apartment or you're not in that house, you're outside, we can't be responsible for you. But if you are in that house or in that apartment, whatever you want to call it, we will save you. We will not be responsible for you if you're not. But she did exactly what she was told. Her family was saved, and she becomes an ancestor of Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus. Folks, that's a pretty cool story, okay? Prostitute to good woman, raised her family, and was spared, okay? She was spared because of her faithfulness. There she is locking the door and making sure that the people of the city of Jericho can't find the spies. They'd have found the spies, they'd have killed them, and the story would have been over. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's three names that we always like to talk about. They're taken captive along with Daniel by King Nebuchadnezzar whenever the Babylonians came in there and said, we're taking Israel. And they did take it. And Babylon became one of the greatest kingdoms in the history of the world. And but King Nebuchadnezzar is in charge of it. He asked these boys to eat what the king's people had said. You eat this best food. We want you guys to do well. We want you to prosper. We want to use your expertise and knowledge. We want you to do well. But they would not eat the king's delicacies. They ate their own food. And after about 10 days, he brings them back in and says, what's going on, guys? And they said, they didn't eat the king's delicacies. They ate their own food. And they found these boys to be 10 times better than the other princes, okay? And the other king's sons. They refused to bow down to the king's idol. And so then they were thrown into a fiery furnace. They refused to bow down to the king's idol and were thrown into a fiery furnace. They came out of the furnace unscathed. And look at this picture here. See the three people in the furnace? The one on the right, you see an apparition. Because the king looks in there, King Nebuchadnezzar, he looks in there and he says, but I threw three people in there and there are four. And the Bible says it was the Son of Man. They were saved from the fire. They were saved from the flames. They come out of the fire without any, not even singed. And that had them accused were thrown into the fire themselves. Persevere, folks. This is when trouble comes. Now let's move over to the New Testament. The Apostle Peter, one of Christ's apostles, one of the first four that Jesus chose, James and John and Peter and Andrew, one of Christ's apostles. He walked with him for 3 or 3.5 years. He wanted to fight when they came to the garden to arrest Jesus. But then he got timid. After he saw that Jesus was hauled away and a whole contingent came to get Jesus, they called him away. And Peter then got a little bit nervous because not only going to get Jesus, they're coming to get his helpers, his family. So he denied the Lord 3 times. And the Bible tells us after he denied the Lord the 3rd time that Jesus looked at him and fastened his eyes upon him, it says. And Peter realized what a disastrous thing he had done. And he went out and wept bitterly. Have you ever wept bitterly? I have a few times in my life. I've wept bitterly because of the loss of someone that I love so dearly. Wept bitterly. Peter had condemned his Lord by his denial. I'll go with you to death, Jesus. They may throw me in prison. They'll do what they want to with me. I will never deny you. Jesus says, you'll deny me 3 times. And Peter did deny the Lord 3 times. And the 3rd time he went out and wept bitterly. But Peter picks himself up. He picks himself up. And he sees Jesus after Jesus has been resurrected. And Jesus says to Peter, feed my sheep. And he tells him 3 times. And it seems like he told him 3 times because of his denying him 3 times. I'm telling you, Peter, feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. And he did preach the first gospel sermon 50 days after the resurrection of Jesus Christ. There it is. There's one of the maidens pointing to Peter. You're with him. And I was not. Yes, another one says, yes, you were with him. Was not. And the third one says, I know you're with them. Your speech betrays you. You speak as a Galilean. That's where Jesus was from. And Peter cursed and said, I don't even know who you're talking about. Tough times for Peter. Peter made some bad choices, but he picked himself up. Peter and John before the council. This is after the early stages of Acts chapter 3. They've healed why did you get healed for? Well, we healed a lame man on the Sabbath. It don't seem like such a bad thing, does it? Not allowed to work on the Sabbath, though, in the Jewish law. And so clearly you were working because you healed this lame man. Lame man on the Sabbath. In trouble because they preached Jesus. The council had heard enough of it. We don't want to hear more about this Jesus. You need to knock it off, cut it out, quit it. Don't want to hear any more about it. They were threatened. They were beaten. And they were told, don't you ever preach Jesus again. Don't you ever preach Jesus again. But Peter and John answered and said to them, whether it is right in the sight of God to listen to you more than to God, you judge. But we cannot speak the things which we have seen and heard. They were threatened, and then they were beaten, and they were commanded. Don't you ever. Now, whenever Jesus was threatened and beaten, he was killed. Peter and John could have been taken and killed, okay? They did not care, did they? They did not care. We cannot but speak the things which we have seen and heard. In Acts chapter 4, 19 and 20. They were not going to stop. They were not going to stop. There they are. They're being threatened here, guys. Do not preach and teach Jesus anymore. Paul then, the great apostle Paul, stoned at Lystra. What did he get in trouble for? Healing a lame man at Lystra. Well, it seems like these things that these guys are doing that the Jews say are bad, or really don't seem that bad. Healing lame men, people that make them walk again. They called Paul and Barnabas, the people of Lystra, and said, you all are gods. You all are special. You've come down from heaven. You're gods, and we need to make images and idols to you. And they said, we're not any of that stuff. We're nothing. We are nothing. Let me tell you about Jesus. What Peter and Paul and Barnabas, let me tell you about Jesus. We're nothing. So Paul was dragged out of the city, stoned, and left for dead. As disciples gathered around, lo and behold, he rouses up. And he went back into the city. I find this in every way fascinating. I'm 68 years old. I've heard this story 1,000,000 times. And every time I read it or think about it, I think to myself, Paul, when they stone me and leave me for dead, when I wake up, if I miraculously do, I'm leaving Lystra. You'll never see me in Lystra ever again. But Paul went back into the city. You know why? He was not afraid. He did not care what they did. He did not care. There. I can't imagine. I've been hit with a rock a few times before, little rocks. Don't want to ever be hit with a rock again if I could help it. Don't want. Sometimes a mower throw one. Sometimes my brother David threw one. Tony never did throw one. I hope we never did hit her with one. But we threw a few rocks in our day. Don't feel good, does it, Ben? Does not feel good. What about Jesus? Talk about Jesus. Jesus was kicked around. He withstood every temptation from Satan. It's temptations we have no chance of. 40 days and nights without eating a bite. 40 days and nights without eating. He would have been this thin, guys. He'd have been emaciated. He would have been starved to death. We see sometimes pictures from people that lived through the Holocaust. God bless them. You see every crinkle in their bones. They're this big around. They weigh 6. Jesus would have looked like that. Jesus would have been handsome and tough and looking all good. He'd have been starved to death. But he withstood it. And Satan says, you can make bread out of these stones. He didn't do it. He withstood every temptation. When he taught like no one had ever taught before. When I see Henry walking around or different little boys and girls walking around, it makes me happy, okay? It makes me happy because in my mind's eye, I can see little boys and girls walking around when Jesus is preaching the Sermon on the Mount. You know they did it. Little boys and girls, they like to be up moving about. And sometimes they like to holler out. That's wonderful. That's what they need to do, Allie, long as they're here. they're hearing the words of Jesus. Stick. Older, it don't stick so easy. But little ones, it sticks. Jesus taught like no one in the history of the world had ever heard before. He heals multitudes and he feeds thousands. For all that, they tried him, they found him guilty, and sentenced him to death. Jesus, as he prays in the Garden of Gethsemane before he's taken prisoner and taken to die, Jesus prays a long time to his Father. And he begs his Father, let this cup pass from me. I don't want to do this, God. This is going to be hard. But Jesus prayed and begged and pleaded and prayed and begged and pleaded with his Father to let this cup pass from me. But then, as he concludes his prayer, he says, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Poor Jesus. Poor Jesus. Behold, the hour is at hand. Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. I wrote a story about the day my daddy was buried, December 11th, 1993, the prettiest day you ever seen in your life, but the coldest day you've ever felt in your life. The wind was blowing 50 miles an hour. It was crisp and cold. You could barely stand there at the Hopkins cemetery as they're getting ready to lower him into the ground. And there's only one thing to think of when it was time for me and Deb and the kids to head back home. Arise, let us be going. The trouble has come. And the trouble has left an indelible mark. But we have things to make sure of. I had two little 12-year-old boy and girl that still needed daddy. They still needed their mother. I still needed to work. And Deb did too. And we left there with tears in our eyes, but with a thought, just like Jesus said, rise, let's be going. Jesus had turned the corner from fear and worry and dread. And he says, it's time to go. Jesus is going to the cross, folks. He's going to the cross. He could have called 12 legions of angels. I'd have called them. I'd have said, get here as quick as you can. Jesus is going to the cross. And not emaciated, not weak, not feeble Jesus anymore. This is Jesus the Christ. Arise, let's go. Arise, let's go. Always keep this verse in your mind. These are the words of your Savior. Arise, let us be going. What will we do when trouble comes? These just popped in my head a couple weeks ago when I was writing this story. And I think most time when troubles come, we do what? We blame somebody else. It's not my fault. It's what the boss said to do. That's why Mom and Dad raised me. If Daddy hadn't whipped me, I wouldn't have acted like this. If Daddy hadn't smoked, I'd have never smoked. It's somebody else's fault. Folks, a lot of times when troubles come and we get in trouble for it, we're quick to place the blame, aren't we? It has to be somebody else's fault. The preacher and the Bible class teachers didn't do a good enough job teaching me. Mom didn't come home from work at 4 o'clock every day. Sometimes it's 5 o'clock. There's an hour or two. I'd stay by myself. It's somebody's fault. That's what's caused these troubles. Sometimes we whine, don't we? Who all likes to hear somebody whining? Trevor Clark said one time when he was real little, he did not speak very well. He can attest to this. And they had this little kid in Bible class one time. This little kid whined, and Trevor, probably 2 years old, looks across the table at that little kid and said, "You be a whine box." Okay? So Deb and I still say that, don't we? You be a whine box. I've seen kids that are whine boxes, okay? How many of you like it? Allie, don't ever let your kids be whine boxes. That's a bad trait. Nobody likes a whine box. But I see grown people older than me that are wine boxes. Well, boy, it's a beautiful day outside. Yeah, but Thursday's going to rain. Yeah, come on. Have y'all heard that? I believe we've had the prettiest spring we've ever had. Yeah, my tomatoes ain't doing no good at all. Come on, folks. Sometimes tomatoes don't do good. Sometimes it rains a little too much. Sometimes it's a little too hot. We don't need to whine about everything, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we moan. Oh, poor me. You ever hear anybody do that? Deb and I were talking about Toby Keith the other day. He died not too long ago. Was 62, Deb, I think when he died. Pretty young, got cancer. But anyway, in one of his songs, he says, I want to talk about me, because he's got a girlfriend or whatever, and she wants to just talk about herself all the time. There's some people that want to moan all the time, okay? Do you like to be around those people? Do you think they like to be around you if you act that way? Blame somebody, whine about it, or let me just moan a while. That'll be really enduring, and people will really appreciate that. Some people bellyache. These are my words, guys. Oh, guys, the electric bill's up $12 this year today, and everybody else's went down, and mine went up $12. Not fair. We know that, don't we? We know that. Sometimes people just sit down and cry. Well, there's nothing wrong with crying, but sometimes you got to man up, okay? Sometimes you got to just get a grip and press on. And then some people make it as miserable as they possibly can. Make other people as miserable as they possibly can. There's no encouraging word. There's no kind word. There's no pat on the back. There's no hug. There's no I love you. I want to make all of y'all be just as sad as I am. And that's not an endearing trait. And then some people, sadly, they give up. They can't handle it anymore, and they give up. Some people shelter themselves away from people. If I stay away from everybody from now on, things will be better. And some people will even resort to suicide. They will even resort to suicide. And that's so sad. That's so sad. I've always said, if I make everybody in Stanford mad, and my wife leaves me, and my kids leave me, and nobody likes me anymore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get on a Greyhound bus and leave and go to another place. I'm going to try something different, okay? Better. Don't do that. Don't ever give up. Don't ever shelter yourself. I'll stay away from everybody because it seems like nobody likes me. Folks, that's just not the case. There's a world of people out there that love you. But you got to make yourself available. What will we do when troubles come? The ball is in our court. Paul says this about pressing on. I love these verses. There's 3 slides here. Paul's describing his situation. Now you listen to these things that Paul goes through. Are they ministers of Christ, Paul says? These people that whine, bellyache, and complain and moan? I speak as a fool, Paul says. I am more. In labors, I've worked harder than all of them. In stripes above measure. I can't even tell you how many times I've been whipped because of what I believe in. In prisons more frequently. In Philippi, he is doing what? He and Silas? Singing hymns to the Lord. In prisons more frequently. In deaths often. I've seen people killed for their belief, okay? From the Jews, 5 times I received 40 stripes, save one. 5 times. And the Jews' goal was in those days is we don't maybe want to kill him, but we want to beat them to death. And those are figures of speech. Beating him nearly to death. 3 times I was beaten with rods. I don't know how the rods would have beat you, but it couldn't have been good. 3 times. Once I was stoned. We talked about that in Lystra. 3 times I was shipwrecked. There's a man not long ago that was on an Air India flight. Y'all saw it on the news. And the plane crashed, and he was in seat 11A, and he lived through it. 1 man out of 242, plus people on the ground got killed. I probably would never fly again. Would y'all? Probably never fly again if I'm that man. I'm not afraid to fly, but if I live and I'm the only one out of 242 that lives, I probably won't fly anymore. That's just me. Paul was shipwrecked 3 times. A night and a day have I been in the deep, in danger of drowning, in journeyings often, in perils of water, perils of robbers, perils of my own countrymen, perils of the Gentiles, in perils of the city, in perils of the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren. Jews, Gentiles don't matter. Robbers, they all was after me, okay? They was all, sometimes I was out in the city, I was in trouble, like in Lystria. Sometimes I was out in the wilderness, I was in trouble. I couldn't get away from trouble. In weariness and toil. Jimmy and I were talking yesterday. I used to stay up 21 hours a day, 22 times. Jimmy sometimes stays up longer than that. And Jimmy and I were talking. When you stay up for 21 hours a day for about 3 days, about the third day, somebody come on to you and say, "Hi, Shelby Roy. Good to see you today." Shut up. I mean, you're worn out. You are exhausted. Have y'all ever experienced that? You're exhausted. You don't mean to be short with the people. You don't need to be hateful with them, but you can't help it. You're exhausted. You are exhausted. Allie, if you stay up all night with the boys and they're sick and you go to work the next day, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough. You don't want to be short with people, but you're exhausted. Paul says, I'm weary. I'm worn out. No sleep. In hunger and thirst and fastings, cold and nakedness, beside the other things, thinking and caring for the churches. These are from 2 Corinthians 11, 23 to 28. Folks, we've not been through hardly any of those things. We've not been beaten with rods. We've not been stoned. We've not been shipwrecked. We've been tired, and we've been aggravated, and we've been treated bad sometimes by other people. But Paul says this in 2 Corinthians 12:10. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in needs and persecutions and distress for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I think that every trial and every test that Paul went through made him stronger, don't you? I know it did. I know it did. Every trial and every persecution and every trouble that you go through, it'll make you stronger if you let it. If you will let it. Now, you can let it bog you down. You can let it break you down. Or you can be like Joseph. You can be like Job. You can be, Job says, naked came I from my mother's womb. Naked will I return. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Joseph welcomed his family back to him. The very brothers that tried to kill him and wanted him dead, he's welcomed them back, and he kept them alive in their families because of that. He reconciled. He got over it. He moved on. Peter denied the Lord straight-faced, cursing. But Peter got over it. And Peter picked himself up off the ground, and he preached the first gospel sermon. And then he told the people that told me to quit preaching, we will never quit preaching. We will never quit preaching. Jesus says there in the garden with his guys, they can't stay awake. They're tired, exhaustion. Jesus says, guys, let's go. Where we going, Jesus? I'm going to the cross. You're going to the cross. I'm going to the cross. Folks, troubles and trials are sure to come. But remember Philippians chapter 3. Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended. But this one thing I do, forgetting the things which are behind and reaching forth to the things which are before, I press toward the mark, the prize, the high calling of God in Jesus. Pressing toward the mark should be your goal today, tonight, tomorrow morning, and every day that you live. Press toward the mark. And then whenever Jesus says, well done, thou good and faithful servant, enter into the joys that have been prepared for you, say, all worth it. All worth it. I didn't quit. I didn't give up. I didn't whine, bellyache, moan, or complain. I'm pressing towards the mark. I am going to heaven. Can you say that this morning? I am going to heaven. And I want you guys to go with me. If there's any way we can help you in any way whatsoever to get to heaven, if you need to be baptized, we can baptize you this morning. The clothes are here. The towels are dry. The water is warm. It's all ready to go. Baptize you today. If you've fallen outside the body of Christ, you say, I need to come back home. I've been belly aching and whining and moaning and doing wrong too long. I got to come back. Come back today, okay? Come back today and ask for the prayers of the church. We'll pray with you and for you. If you have a private, a private sin that needs to be taken care of, fix it between you and God. today, and you say, I don't care what the rest of the people do. I can't be sure about what anybody's going to do. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord, and I am on my way to heaven. Forgetting the things which are behind, I press towards the mark. If you have any need, please come as we stand and sing.